California Social Welfare Archive's annual awards reception. Now, one of the tasks assigned to me was to remind you that you should avail yourself of the food that's available today. But it looks to me as if that's an unnecessary message. Everyone looks as though they found the food, and I do want to say that this is a little bit casual in that if you find that you need something to drink or a little extra dessert during the program, feel free to get up and go help yourself. Also, there is a notice that at about 5:45, the staff of the Galen Center will be out with coffee, and if it's coffee, is it tea, Katie? Just coffee. Come for refilling your coffee. So that's just a note to get started. I'm Esther Gillies, the president of the California Social Welfare Archive, and I'll be your host for the program today. As we begin, I would like to express our thanks to the many people who make this event and the work of the CSWA possible.
Dorothy Fleischer. Dorothy, raise your hand so we can see you. Chair of the Program Committee, and her committee members, Carol Ann Peterson and Alma Folks. And I know Alma's here. Alma, there you are. Thank you so much. To the CSWA Board of Directors, David Carota, Heather Halpern, Helen Maxwell, Rafael Angulo, Carlos Sosa, Bill Dombrowski, Monica White, Phyllis Massing, Colleen Friend, Suzanne Dworak-Peck, Melody Video, the librarian of the School of Social Work, and Claude Zachary, the University Archivist, and Asha Gayasinghe, ex officio member and director of advancement. To Dean Marilyn Flynn, an ex officio member of the board, for her ongoing support of the CSWA. To our program manager, Katie Mahalski, for her tireless efforts in chasing the details and keeping us all on track. And thank you to Shirley Gentilini. Shirley, you're here somewhere. There you are, Shirley. The president of the board of directors for NASW California, for joining us today. And finally, I want to thank all of you, family, friends, social work colleagues, and others, for sharing this special event with us. Your participation in recognizing the honorees inspires others in the social work community to aspire to levels of excellence as social workers, and promotes and validates the importance of the work of the archives. To begin, let's reflect on the origins of the CSWA. During the 1960s and 70s, there was an explosion of creativity, growth, and development of social welfare services and programs across California and the nation. Toward the end of the 1970s, a group of dedicated social workers at the University of Southern California School of Social Work, who were approaching retirement years, posed the questions, what if all the advances achieved in social welfare during this prolific time fade away and are forgotten? What if the theories, knowledge, and understanding achieved by our generation are lost to future social workers and social welfare advocates in our state? What can we do to ensure that advances made in our time remain available to inform decisions and planning of future social welfare programs, social justice activities, legislation, programs, and services? Begun as a small informal group, the CSWA has advanced over time to become a formal nonprofit organization, affiliated with the USC Special Collections Library and operating under the auspices of the USC School of Social Work. Today, our holdings include over 100 major collections, plus miscellaneous papers and minor collections from nearly 450 organizations in California. We have people coming from universities across the country that come here to search through our records for theses and for dissertations and for research projects related to materials that we hold in our library. And over 135 oral histories are posted on the USC School of Social Work YouTube channel, and they are viewed by thousands of people. This was a dramatic change for the CSWA. We've had oral histories since about 1979, but to hear them, you had to come in, you had to make an appointment with Claude, you had to have the equipment to listen to the recordings, and they are now available on YouTube, and we literally can see the changes day by day of the hundreds of people that are clicking on those oral histories. We have video recordings of our annual awards events dating back to 2005, and one recently discovered audio recording of the 1997 annual awards event. It's really historical. Bruce Jansen was the keynote that day. This is on audio. You can only hear it, but it's on YouTube. Bruce Jansen is the keynote address speaker, and it was the first annual awards luncheon attended by the newly appointed dean, Marilyn Flynn. We have video recording of our Hall of Distinction induction ceremonies dating back to 2008. And we have the California Social Work Hall of Distinction with members now numbering 85, with 6 more to be inducted in October. Our recent additions to the archives include new materials from the Beverly Foundation, and this is really fascinating. We had papers from the Beverly Foundation about their the initial development of the organization and their operation over many years, but this is one organization that, after many years of operation, decided that their mission was no longer necessary in their community. Other sources had developed that replaced the need for them. And rather than change their mission to continue operating as an organization, they decided to close. Can you imagine that? A social welfare program closing. Not just failing, but closing. With a planned closing with a very specific method. And this is a fascinating set of papers that have come to us about this possible phenomenon for organizations in other arenas. We have a video recording of the most recent Hall of Distinction induction held in Oakland last October, and we have new oral histories from Andy Diepa, social work educator, leader, and staunch advocate for underserved populations and Latino civil rights. An oral history from Sailing Chansu, Director of Child and Youth Family System of Care in the San Francisco Department of Public Health, where she was an innovative developer of comprehensive services to children and families, and was very involved in developing culturally appropriate service programs in San Francisco's Chinatown. Jane Kuehara, longtime field faculty of the UCLA School of Social Work, it's social welfare. My UCLA friends will never forgive me if I misspeak. It's the School of Social Welfare. A strong advocate for inclusion of minority students in schools of social work. And new activities for the CSWA. More than a decade ago, Francis Lomas Feldman, one of the CSWA founders, began talking about creating an endowment to support the mission of the CSWA. But that goal was elusive, and only now, in our 35th year, that vision becomes a possibility. You will note in your program that a major gifts campaign, preserving our social welfare heritage to support the CSWA, is well underway. This groundbreaking campaign is the most ambitious fundraising effort in the CSWA's history. Once established, the endowment will enable the archives to continue into perpetuity. We are extremely grateful to the donors who have supported us in our initial outreach phase. And today, as we launch the public phase of the campaign, a special opportunity. A matching gift provided by Suzanne Dworak-Peck, the past president. So you don't even know what it is yet, and you're applauding. That's remarkable. I must have made my point already. Sue, thank you. You have contributed a matching gift that will be, well, I have to tell you a little bit about Sue. Sue is past president of the National NASW, past president of the NASW California, and a past president of the page 2. International Federation of Social Workers, where she currently continues as an ambassador for that organization. She will match all new donations to the CSWA endowment for the next 90 days, effectively doubling them. So we will... Sue, you want to stand up so we can all see who you are? We all know you. Thank you so much, Sue. And now, to the event of today. Our keynote speaker this afternoon has been involved in research over the years with tens of thousands of schools and millions of students. I find that hard to believe, Ron. Millions of students? But that's the information I got. Millions of students. Teachers, they don't all know him personally, he says. Students, teachers, parents, and administrators. He's now involved in a project to improve school climate for children in military families. We are so privileged today to have with us Dr. Ron Avi Astor, the Richard M. and Ann L. Thor Professor of Urban Social Development, who holds joint appointments in the USC School of Social Work and the USC Rossier School of Education. Ron will be addressing military-connected school children, challenges and solutions. Ron?
So I don't talk too much, but famous last words. I heard that. I heard that. I want to say for me this is very personal, especially coming from my colleagues and from this particular group. My father died when I was about 3 years old. He was a graduate of USC School of Social Work. Actually, he finished the same year as Richard Thor. Ann Thor is actually here. I'm the Richard and Ann Thor Professor of Social Urban Development, and I'm thrilled that Ann is here as well to acknowledge that. All three of my children have attended USC. One of them is here. Their baby is the representative right over there, Shahar, who had to suffer through it. Sorry, the other two ones in Africa, the other one's in Israel, doing education and social work-related work. And my wife, Sheva, at the time she was Sean Locke, now she's Sheva Locke, is also here, and this is where we met. During the master's program that I did here at USC, 1983-1985. So this has a lot of personal meaning for me. On top of that, June Brown is here in the back, who still, I joke about it, but she, maybe you'll change that A- to an A today afterwards from those three classes. But I'm thrilled about that. And there's so many other people here that throughout my development and life. So this is just a real treat. I'm called to talk to lots of different places, but I'm especially pleased to be here. So thank you. See, that was only a minute and 45 seconds. But I want to start off by saying that one of my favorite rabbis. I never met him, but he wrote a lot. Maimonides, from the late 14th century, who was the physician to the King of Spain, talked a lot about that the highest level of giving, the highest level of charity is actually to give to a group of people who you don't know and who they don't know you. And then they don't know that you gave, and you don't know that you gave to them. Specifically and perfectly. It's a very hard thing to do, if you think about it, because people don't like to do that. And by chance, I'm also the national chair of the Education Book Award for the Book of the Award year. And the book that won this year, don't ever volunteer to be a chair of a book committee, by the way. It's like 100 plus, books a year. You need another doctorate when you finish. And one of the book that won this year that I'm actually going to Philadelphia tomorrow to give to the Book Award winner, it's great. It's like, they have like 16,000 people there for the Book Award ceremony. One of his findings was, with all the evidence-based programs that we have and all the efforts that we do, by the way, this is very important for social work, I think. The programs that seem to be working, now hold on to your seats right now, require a tremendous amount of work and many hours and lots of different people. Now, that's why I said hold on to your chairs, because, it's duh, but when you look at the programs and what we do, people forget about that. I mean, I actually live, with my wife, and we see each other, but we're working a lot because we care about different programs, and my kids. If we care about something, it's a lot of people, it's a lot of effort, and it's like the Maimonides thing. Some people who never see the actual product, and the product doesn't actually see the people, but they get connected. And I want to start off with that today before we get into the talk. And I'm not going to read to you every single name that's on this list, but this is the best we could. If we left you out, I apologize. But we have literally thousands of people working on what I'm going to talk about today in here. Then UPC, these are just people that are just directly on. I can't read everybody's name. I won't be able to. I'm going to go through it. It's City Center, as you can see here. San Diego Academic Center. These are people that have actually worked on what I'm going to talk about. Rossier, the VAC, Chapman University, San Diego State University, Old Dominion, Bar Ilan University in Israel. We have actually one student that's here from Nanjing. Norway, we had consultants from all over the United States working hard on what I'm talking about. The military school liaison officers, San Diego State University, Wested, UCLA, the Military Child Educational Coalition, Teachers College Press, all the superintendents and the vice superintendents that are on it, all the external instructors that are working with our MSWs who are there 2 or 3 days a week. And these are all the students that were actually placed in the schools over the years. So I just want to give them acknowledgement because none of this could happen without them. Having said all that, I'm hoping that the team members here that are working on the team, the students that are here, if you could please stand so I can acknowledge you. Please, everybody from the building capacity team that's here, please stand. I want to particularly acknowledge Hazel Atwell. Where is she? Professor Hazel Atwell, who has really worked tirelessly as the program manager, and Tamika Gilreath, who has given us kind of the intellectual leadership on the analytic part with the large data piece that really has catapulted what I talked about to, that's the reason why we're in all the national media. And Linda, who's done a phenomenal job on the newsletters that you all see endlessly every month and on our books. Thank you so much. And Trina for this, putting everything into a new app. And there's so many other of you here that I can't acknowledge individually, but I want to thank you. I wouldn't be able to do any of this without Rami Ben-Benishti, who's my like a brother and a partner in Israel. Now I'm going to start off with probably what you waited to hear, but I think it was important to acknowledge this monumental effort that everybody's put in, and I'm lucky to have this team. I would like you to hear some of the voices of the students themselves who are on the project. Hopefully this works. Yeah. Can you hear it?
My mom's not around, I'll have no one to talk to, and I'll have no one to help me. I'm not home when I really need it.
I would be at home alone, trying to do my homework, and nobody help me.
Being the man in the house, it's pretty hard because I worry a lot about what's going to happen, and I don't really pay attention. I help my mom out. I do whatever I can, and then as months go by, I'm like just waiting to see it. They didn't know how to handle it because they don't really get that many military kids. not on a military base to help us because they know what we're going through.
Most of the kids that understand from Israel, your dad's military, that's no big deal, and they get in front of you. That doesn't affect you at all. They understand what in the military school, they understand what you're going through.
In civilian school, they don't know to appreciate that. They don't know how you feel. So if something happens, they can't relate to that or understand.
A lot of schools that have like kind of the same curriculum, like big off-base schools, except for like this school here being an off-base school, they go by like an entirely different curriculum than other schools.
They both do different things. Like California does world history. Some other states just do their state's history, so it's kind of hard to deal with the different subjects because they might be looking at something new.
It's pretty hard because when I moved out here from Minnesota, we were learning completely different things in each core subject. And I got out here and kind of like way ahead of us. Your grades take a while to transfer over. If you go in the middle of the year, one school will be on Algebra 1 for 8th grade, and another school will be on pre-algebra or something higher. One, being like, I don't really know who my dad is at this point because he's gone so often. Two, dealing with the fact that we're constantly moving and not knowing what's going to be next. Three, having people who don't understand you whatsoever.
It's hard working groups. My dad is
So, most of you know that my prior work has to do, people say, oh, you switched from doing school safety to bullying kind of work. And for me, at all, if you heard what the kids say, you'll hear deployments, you'll hear moves, you'll hear, but what was most interesting to me is my interest in this topic actually came through school safety and the idea that I didn't even know there were military kids in public schools at the time. We were seeing bullying. We were seeing other kinds of outcomes, but we didn't actually know that group was in public schools. Most people in the United States actually think that they're in Department of Defense schools. They don't even realize they're in the common public schools that we're here right now. There's very few of them, actually. There are about 86,000. The vast majority are in public schools, and they're somewhat invisible. So they're the new kids on the block, and they get bullied, and they feel alienated because the rest of civilian culture is business as usual on the whole around the issue of the war. And what's most disturbing is if you look at the children of the veterans right now, we're talking about up to 5 million kids in public schools that are somewhat invisible. So it's still about school safety. It's still about feeling comfortable in your, but this is a group that we just as a civilian society have not thought about. And that's true for the drawdown as well with veterans that are coming into our communities. But this is right under our noses in our public schools. And what makes them most vulnerable is not only the deployments and the feelings of what's happening to my parents while they're at war or in a harmful situation abroad, it's the number of moves and the number of schools that they have as well. They're always the new kid on the block. Now, what I'm going to show to you in terms of what we did here, the prior work that we had done when Shachar was just 2 years old and Sheva was starting to be a school principal, I took a Fulbright year in Israel, and our work started with the Israeli ministry and is currently in 3,000 schools. That's how you get the millions. And what we described here actually started working in Israel to build capacity. They've had 50, depending on the issue, it could be as low as 35 up to 60% reductions using the kinds of methods we're talking about here. A few years back, when I was giving a lecture at the Sorbonne, the University of Paris, one of the professors there said, you know, you're talking about all this work in Israel, but what about what's happening with the kids whose parents serve in Iraq and Afghanistan and the United States? And for me, that was part of the big shift in terms of shifting and looking at U.S. public schools, because up until that point, I was looking at war around the world, terrorism, community violence. I wasn't thinking about, and I think the rest of civilian society as well here is kind of having an aha experience here too. So when I came back, that's when I started finding out, in fact, they are in the public schools. So we started this consortium that has about 145 public schools with 8 school districts that you saw on the initial page. And it is a community school consortium here in the San Diego, Camp Pendleton area. Omar is here. He was part of helping getting it off the ground, Omar Lopez, and there's a variety of other people as well here too, Pam Francois and others, to try and get the schools to partner with us. And this is the data that I'm going to be showing you about in terms of that we have here. So our first goal was to actually teach our MSWs how to do the school social work with military-connected kids in public school. That had never been done before. We're the first program. And since we had a military social work program, we adapted, particularly in the San Diego area, some of the work that was there in these placements. The second one is because these kids were invisible, where were they? Nobody quite knew if they were in their schools, which classes they were in, what their needs were. So we wanted to create a data-driven system so that we could pinpoint the problems to the right classes, what we had done in Israel as well, too, to the right schools, to the right classes, and provide the right resources and existing resources in the neighborhood, in the community, in the county, to the right places. And then expand those resources and build the capacity. So those were the different goals. We're a little bit different than other projects that focus only on individuals or only on groups of kids from a clinical point of view. What we had done in Israel, and we did here too, is we actually focused on the whole school setting in addition to groups and individual children. And that came from work that we had done, and we noticed that there were entire schools where the kids were exposed to war, exposed to terrorism, but they didn't have a lot of at-risk outcomes, even though their families and communities did. The school kind of served almost like a vaccine. If they were intended to have problems because of all the risk factors and they happened to attend those schools, they never became victims of bullying. They never got into drugs because of the peer group. So the school actually had the power, the context itself, of working almost like a prevention vaccine. And that's how we modeled this as well, too. I'm not going to get into the details here. What I want you to know is our first step. I know my Rami and the rest of the group always say, oh, no, don't show that slide. But I promised them I'd put it in anyways. So the first step is to identify all the resources in the community. This is what social workers do all the time. But then, of course, work on a mass scale on how to build shared goals around the data and around the information, and then to actually work on pieces of infrastructure that exist and change those so they could serve those. In other words, not new resources, changing the existing resources that actually won't cost anything and could be sustained afterwards. And then monitoring that, almost like a social biofeedback system at every level that you could imagine, so you could follow what the teachers, what the kids, what the principals, what the parents, what the community organizations are thinking and doing, so you could adjust quickly and actually find things from the ground up. And, of course, issues of bullying, issues of substance use, issues of suicide, all the at-risk things that kids we worry about, but they're all happening together in the same setting, even with the same kids. So this is kind of our model here. So we actually picked an existing survey through the state of California, the California Healthy Kids Survey, and we were able to convince them to actually add a military child identifier and also one that could capture some of the veterans as well too. And we were surprised at how quick that went. And they actually allowed us to develop a module, a military module that is now being used. The advantage of picking something that exists, it's available to all schools in California now. So we're actually going to get for the first time the data right now, every single secondary school and elementary school in California, so we could identify military and non-military for each school in each class and then direct resources. So that is an artifact of picking something that exists. Now, it's different than other research methodologies. It fits more social work in general because whatever we do, it hits lots of levels automatically because we pick those existing resources. So it's not just the individual child, it's not just the school, it's not just the region, and in Israel it's national. Because you pick that indicator system there, you could then use that same data to compare schools with each other, regions with each other, the state with the schools, and that data is more interactive than if you just ran a study or if you just had a program, per se, that you were running for a short period of time. And you could follow it because it happens every year. So this is, again, getting to the millions. If you go over 15 years, 3,000 schools in Israel and schools in France, and now here, it starts accumulating in terms of how many kids. Now, we're also a little bit different in terms of our thinking and more similar to social work, in my opinion, because we not only look at evidence-based practices, those are really important, we're also finding the homegrown practices. Those are really important for us because we believe there are schools and there are teachers and principals and so that actually have good ideas. maybe good ideas that are better than ours at the university system. And just like you have those studies go and study, let's say, cancer in a community that has very low rates of cancer, and they shouldn't, and you find out what they do, and then you could develop interventions. Our data, because it's so comprehensive, you could actually find schools that have great ideas, things that work, and we could then spread those to other places that are easier to use and actually are new evidence-based programs. So I just wanted to, so when we started out our program, this is just an example, being afraid, being in a fight. And once we were able to separate the military and non, the big question is, are they having a bigger problem than the other kids or not? And clearly these are just examples of them. They were in all the categories. So now that we have the data system, we were able to see that these places were not connected with universities. So just to talk about scale a little bit, we added 85,000 hours, 250 new graduate student placements from all the various different universities, 40,000 hours, 500 undergraduate mentors to the school sites where they didn't, all these did not exist before and they don't cost any money right now. 4,000 students in pride clubs to deal with some of the issues that you saw that were mentioned. 3,000 students in deployment groups, again, weren't before because we now have the student placements that were trained to do them. The community organizations were there, but they weren't connected to the exact places and the areas, so we're able to connect them to real-time places, issues, schools, so they could actually serve people, not just abstractly, but with real issues that they're presenting. One of the examples is we partner with the Navy to get a bus and park it on the school grounds and bring all the community resources to that school so the parents, teachers, kids could actually get the resources in their community that were specific to what they said were there, and then training the school staff around the issues that were specific to their classroom or school. It's really different to know about suicide prevention in general, but to know if you're a fifth or let's say a seventh grade or a ninth grade teacher, if the question was, were you thinking about committing suicide, and the teacher knows that 25% of the kids that are military are thinking of suicide, they treat that classroom very differently than if it's an abstract issue, and that was very important for us. And in terms of changing statewide policy, now the state of California and others are actually adding this identifier to all, and LAUSD just did right now, so every kid is going to have a military identifier in there, so we'll know. LA actually does not know how many they have or doesn't have because they've never asked. I'm going to show you one more video here of a student in one school, because everything I said is kind of mass scale, overwhelming, big, but this is how one student in one school, what they did. And please notice the individual, the group, and kind of the school climate matching of understanding what military culture is, those three components.
And other things that may arise because of their military culture.
One of the clubs we have is a study crew and newcomers group where all the new kids in the school come, or we help do things like the help for peace and peace and help for training for being decorated. About 90% of the girls group is all is mostly military. And everyone in that group suffered through death, deployments, they suffered through everything that I suffered through. So it's easier just to let my emotions out in there instead of middle class.
So when you have people like Kim Becker, it's interesting for us to have you. Around the Marine Corps birthday, she did a program, a cake cutting ceremony for all of her students.
I got talking to some folks, the junior ROTC at Oceanside High School, and he found that he was a retired Marine, and that his whole junior ROTC program, the students do practice for the Marine Corps birthday ceremony, and they were willing to come on over to Jefferson Middle School and to perform that ceremony at the school. I had a little vision to have a birthday banner and to sign some for our Marines, and just to recognize the military students on the campus and to let them know that, hey, we knew you're out there, we know that this is a tradition that your family participates in, and we are recognizing you as the military child.
It was unique for our military students to see, and for our other community students to see also, to see what a taste of military customs and tradition.
Esther, she's helped me make a lot of friends in these clubs, and if these clubs aren't there, I probably wouldn't even know half the people I know now. I guess Miss Becker always gives me hope, like maybe my dad's gonna be like, he's gonna help, the war's gonna end, and like, it's gonna be over with.
It's a lot for a child to experience. It's a lot for a child to have to deal with from their peers who don't understand what they're going through. And that in and of itself strengthens that child's character. And I think our military kids are the strongest part of our military families.
So imagine that over 145 schools, 120,000 kids approximately, and that kind of, so I won't go through, I'm going to flash through these quickly, but we found a lot of on-the-ground programs that were ground up that we've been spreading quite a bit, like Partners in Learning with UCSD for tutoring, the Pride Clubs I mentioned, working with UCLA and Project Focus to work specifically in deployment groups again. We worked with Omar again here to work with the Padres. They're doing it again in NASW to recognize military family kids and distribute resources. All these have research components that we're collecting qualitatively and quantitatively to actually show their effectiveness, which is really important for us. This is just a nice picture of a ground-up move of a project where the kids saw the data on bullying and decided to paint all their buses in Temecula, and then the banks and the community members all started wearing purple and black to recognize the anti-bullying program that they created. It looks like there was some effectiveness to this too. So here's the bus I talked about earlier, so you could just actually see that it was parked on school grounds. We were able to organize, this is Patty Shinseki, so you could see all the classic social work skills. The difference here is that we're collecting them all together and seeing how they work in concert with each other. This has led to great political action at the legislature level, and again I mentioned in Los Angeles. We then decided also to create videos, so you could go onto our website and see model example places so that it's not just data speaking, it's coming from the data, but you could see, for example, how gardens, like one school picked gardens to get the military families and kids, and then how that then spreads across all the various different schools and school districts. What did we do? This is about a year and a half worth of data, maybe to 2 since by the time we started the interventions till afterwards. And you could see for issues of peer victimization, we're having reductions for the students that are military in red, but also because of the whole school approach for the non-military. And we have tables, go through them all with substance use and other kinds of mental health outcomes that are also showing reductions. Similar in the process to what happened in Israel, but this is a much shorter piece of time. We think these are probably going to continue when the program leaves. We're in our sustainability year, and it looks like they are. Here's an example of the substance use with the same kind of things, binge drinking, marijuana, LSD, psychedelics, reductions in all these categories in a relatively short period of time. This is being acknowledged by the White House. We had Jill Biden come and speak to us. That was very exciting as part of the joining forces. And then I mentioned Linda earlier, and the group, we actually pulled together guides in a collaborative process to the voice of the teachers, principals, parents, social workers, psychologists, so that it's an easy-to-use, best ideas, best practices books published by Columbia Teachers College Press. If you'd like your own copy, there's a website here. You could actually go on there, request one, it'll be mailed to your house. And please visit our site, too. There's tons of ideas, newsletters, and we're just excited. If you know anybody who's military or veteran or schools or other, please feel free to use this material and spread it. And that's about it. I'm about 2 minutes over. So thank you very much. I don't know if you have any questions. Yes?
I like what you're doing, but I want to ask another policy question. Do you think these kids are suffering a little bit more because of the overall policy in the U.S. that we're an all-volunteer army, where only about 10 to 12% of the population participate in the army, so which means that their parents are deployed more than once, more than twice, more than 3 times?
Right.
That it may be a little bit different if it was an all, everybody had to be in the military rather than just 10 to 12%.
Right. I think it's 1%. The correct number is 1% is participating in it, and 99% are not. So it's even smaller than that. And I think you hit it right on the head. So if I compare the prior work, and the question is it because of the disparity between the number of people serving versus those who are not serving? And we think actually that's part of the dynamic that's happening here in the United States. That's why we're putting so much of the efforts actually not targeting the military kids. If you notice, we're targeting the civilian population to make them more like it was in World War II, more welcoming, everybody, because that's part of the healing process. That's part of the integrated. It's not just clinical services, which are really important. It's moving them out into the community and educating those people who are coming in. As an example, my earlier work, as I mentioned, is in Israel. So, most of the population there, except for parts of the Arab population and the ultra-Orthodox, serve or do some kind of, and so there's a sense of understanding around war, around issues of terrorism, around suffering, death, loss, that is automatic because everybody's part of it. Here, part of the shock is business as usual. They don't know what you went through, they don't know what's happening, so it's hard for them to respond in the classroom level, at the peer level. So that Marine's birthday piece had a big impact on those kids, not just from an FYI perspective, this is what the Marines do, and all the peers and teachers kind of understood what was in their classroom from a more personal level. So I think, yes. I think part of the healing process is not the military and the families, it's us. It's the civilians. Are we out of time? Great, thank you.
Ron, it was just wonderful. I understand the millions. I understand the millions. What a comprehensive, integrative, broad scope project you're involved with. It is so impressive. And I thank you so much. Wonderful information. As we celebrate the 28th Honors event today, we pay tribute to social workers and the community activists who have made significant contributions to social welfare in California. The George D. Nickel Awards are named after one of the founders of the CSWA and are made each year to individuals whose outstanding contributions to social welfare warrant special attention and recognition. The list of past honorees is on the inside cover of your program. We are joined today by some past recipients of our Nickel Awards, including Monica White, Jacqueline McCroskey, Wendy Smith, David Kuroda, Sue Dworak-Peck, and Ann Thor. Let's give them a round of applause. We are privileged today to have Professor and Vice Dean of USC School of Social Work with us today to present the George D. Nickel Award for Outstanding Contributions to Social Welfare by a Social Worker to Ron Astor. Dr. Paul Maiden.
Well, Welcome. I was so pleased when I got invited to make this award to Ron, because a couple of years ago I got invited to make the one to Bruce Jansen. And when I do this, I think I got invited because I find a story, okay? And I'm going to tell you a story because it's a good one. I met Ron when I came to USC in 2007 as a vice dean, and Ron was the chair of Curriculum Council, which I figured out ran the curriculum for the school. When I came in, the dean gave me kind of 5 charges, in addition to doing academic and student affairs, listed off things I want you to look at for program development, okay? And one was a doctoral at ESW, one was online education, one was military social work, and there were a couple of ones in there. And I chose military social work first because my own parents' background in the military. I did an internship in the VA in graduate school just post-Vietnam, and never forgot that experience because it was so terrible. And I realized how poorly we treated our returning veterans. And so I started to work on that project. As I said, Ron was the chair of Curriculum Council, and I presented the curriculum that I had kind of developed in October 2007. And by the holiday time, we had it approved and through Curriculum Council. And that only happened because Ron was the chair. Because I was brand new to the faculty and to the administration, and I just thought that's the way things happened in the School of Social Work. And he came to me after and he said, wow. He said, you did that in record time. And I said, what are you talking about? Because I was always used to doing things fast. And he said, that usually takes a couple, 2 or 3 years. So, and then Ron, we finished up the year. We got the curriculum approved, and Ron went on sabbatical. And in that time, the second year, we started looking at San Diego. We developed and opened the San Diego Academic Center, home of military social work, and hired our first director and our first field person, Pam Francois. And then along came Omar, as Ron's mentioned, and other faculty. And when Ron came back from sabbatical, I said, Ron, you got to go to San Diego. The person we hired for field, Pam Francois, was a school social worker, and the first internship she set up were in the school district, because she was a school social worker, was a natural. And she started coming and said, man, they're having all sorts of problems in these schools, and they have no idea what to do with it. And long story short was Ron's project. Went down there, did the project with Dodea, and you can see kind of what's happened here. And all of that came about as a result of Ron's prior work, internationally. So just an enormous accomplishment. So that was my first interaction with Ron. I will tell you that Ron, I was trying to ask, is there a term for a junior rabbi? I have a senior rabbi, Marty Levine at USC. But if there's a term for junior rabbi, Ron is my junior rabbi because he comes by, we chat, and and catch up on things. So I do want to tell you something about Ron, though. Ron is what I define or call a lifer. Okay, I've been at USC for 8 years. It's a very short tenure compared to lots of other people. But Ron was kind of born into USC, and although he didn't know this until much later on in his life, Ron did relay a short story to you about his father. And there's much more to that story that I want to share with you because that's the part I want to tell about Ron and what makes him so special. In getting to know Ron, I always kind of look, well, what's your story? What are you about? Where do you really come from? Not just what you're doing at USC. And when Ron was a student, an MSW student at USC, and as he said, June Brown was one of his professors. And I've had those students, too, who have the A minus and they think you should get an A. I mean, it's like, boy, they're obnoxious, aren't they? Anyway. But Ron was telling me that his father passed away when Ron was 3 years old of a massive coronary. And it was not until Ron was in graduate school and he was in the library and doing research and he came across his father's thesis and did not know that his father was an MSW graduate. It turned out, too, that his father's thesis chair was Maury Hemovich, who was the dean, okay? And there's more to the story. The topic of his thesis was impact on wives of having hospitalized husbands with cardiac illness. And Ron's father died from a coronary. So Gordon Astor, published in June 1959. So I decided that I was going to go find that thing because I just kind of wanted to read it. And so I called Melanie, our librarian, and as it turns out, she said, yeah, it's in the Grand Library. It's in another facility off campus. And I said, well, can you track it down? I need it because I'm doing this presentation. I want to bring it here. And I was traveling, and she sent me an email. And she said, well, We've located it, but it's actually not there. And she said it's actually checked out. It's been checked out since 1986. Okay, and he knows what's coming, doesn't he? Oh, and by the way, it's checked out to Ron Avi Astor. Now, Ron graduated in 1985, and when he left USC, he took a gift with him, didn't he? Now, I want to tell you, that was 28 years ago. The phone call I got just before we started was from the library. That was 10,220 days ago. The fine is 25 cents a day. And you know, when it was gone in the 1980s, they couldn't find Ron. Okay? Now they realize Ron is back at USC. Ron, I'm sorry, but you're going to be getting a bill for $2,555.25 for the library fine. So, it is an absolute it's an absolute pleasure working with Ron, and I just want to make a remark about this picture, because, you know, you look at this picture. This is what I call a leaning-in picture, you know? It's this way. Well, Ron's like that. He's always in your face, okay? But when he is, I mean, he's on a mission about something, and that's what Ron's life is about, and that's what makes it so great to have him here at USC. I mean, you can see the impact he's had just in San Diego and this whole military project just in the future years. He's been doing this his whole career. I mean, he's internationally renowned with his school violence work. And, you know, you look at the charts and, you know, and kind of the graphs and things like that. You know, we have another faculty member, Marlene Wong, who deals with all things related to school violence, you know, kind of, but after it's happened. And I think one of the most remarkable things about Ron, we'll never know the extent, okay? We see some stats and stuff, but imagine all of the events that he's helped prevent, and all of the lives that have been saved, and all the kids that have not been bullied because of his work. Blessings on you, Ron. Thank you. I'd like to present you this award.
I'm going to kick his ass afterwards. Thank you.
This is presented to Ron, the outstanding George T. Nickel Award for Outstanding Professional Services by a Social Worker, to Ron Avi Astor, Ph.D., August 2nd, 2014.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Here we go.
Sure.
Good. Okay. There you go. Thank you very much.
Well, I mean, just as a side thing, one of the things that helps motivate me in my life, I don't think this way anymore. My wife is here, my children are here, but I actually didn't think I had very much time. I thought my dad died when he was 38. I thought I wasn't going to be here. Because his brother died and his father died and his brothers died, and they all had a genetic thing. So that's a blessing in disguise. I got to learn how to slow down a little bit, team, I know. But that's the reason why. You know, when you realize your time is limited, then every day becomes precious, every life that you could help afterwards. And that's why I like the Maimonides thing that I started out with, is because I think, as you mentioned, we won't know, and I really won't know for sure, but because of this great work of this team and the university and your thoughts, prevention is really the key, and we have other recipients here that are doing that too. And if you could think of the number of events that we could prevent, exactly the way you said it, Paul, and the number of suffering that doesn't happen, that's what pushes me, because at the end of the day, when I take my last breath, my family is going to matter, but why we're here, and that's why I keep that thesis too. Thank you.
Dr. Marvin Southard, Director of the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health, is with us today to present the George D. Nickel Award for Outstanding Contributions to Social Welfare to Areta Crowell. Dr. Souther?
So first of all, Ron, I want to thank you for all the new ideas. I saw Carl over there taking notes, so the staff Department of Mental Health will have lots of new projects to start working on. So Dr. Crowell and I both share the role of being mental health directors for LA County Department of Mental Health, and but we have our differences as well. She's a woman, I'm a man. I'm a social worker, she's a psychologist. She's a Canadian, I'm a Mexican. But the biggest thing I believe that we have in common is both of us believe, responding to your quote from Maimonides, is that the job that we have here is a calling, and that calling is to improve the lives of people that we meet, but people that we will never meet. And both of us also have in common that we have had families that have been willing to give us up to this work and these jobs because, at least during periods of time, they're totally consuming. And our families have both been very generous in allowing us to spend our time and energy and passion for people that they do not know. I personally believe that the LA County Department of Mental Health is the leader in the country in preparing an integrated mental health, and substance abuse model that provides for the best model of care that is available in this country for people with serious and persistent mental illness. And Areta is the person who made that possible. And she made that possible by giving our system many, many gifts, but I only have 3 minutes, so I can't go into all of them. But there are 3 major things that I think are her legacy to our department that we still depend on to this day. First of those is her commitment to the recovery model and to the idea that we as mental health professionals had as our first responsibility listening to our clients and finding out what they thought they needed for their recovery to lead full and rich lives. And that commitment, Areta, is something that has sunk deep in our department. It's not just on the surface, it's deep in our DNA, thanks to your work. The second gift that you gave to us is the commitment to use research and data to drive our management. You come from a research background. That commitment has also been ingrained in what we do. And Dr. K has taken that to a new level in our application of our stats program, in which we use data to manage our day-to-day activities, always looking at the outcomes. So Areta, the stats program, and all of our determination to use data to change our programs so that they create better outcomes is also your gift and your legacy to us. And the third thing that I have to mention is that you left us also with a commitment to partnership with communities. And that partnership was not just narrow partnerships with community agencies, although that's a core one, but partnerships more broadly. You began partnerships with law enforcement, with schools, with the universities, with other county departments. And those kind of partnerships, I think you know, perdure to this day. And so that's the third major part of your legacy to the Department of Mental Health. And one of the things that I believe that the Department of Mental Health has to bring forward as we become a part of the larger health system, we bring your gifts forward into the health system and the substance abuse treatment systems. And besides all of that, your legacy as a very warm and wonderful person also perdures. And to that end, my staff wanted me to make sure that besides the formal award, we had a colorful remembrance of what you mean to our hearts. So, Areta, if you come up. And also, the formal award. The California Social Welfare Archives presents the George D. Nickel Award for Outstanding Contributions to Social Welfare to Areta Crowell, Ph.D.
Well, that really leaves me speechless. It is such an honor and a privilege to receive this award from the California Social Welfare Archives. And Marv, I can't thank you enough for your beautiful words, because you really reached and touched the things that you knew are important to me, and that if I could ever wish to have files and so on, we were so happy to do that. But what really captivated me was when I read the first citations for the earliest entries on the Wall of Distinction. And they are amazing. I was just blown away by that early history. Betty Mason, an ex-slave who advanced traditions of philanthropy and volunteerism. Champions of child welfare, protective services, public health social services. All of these things, they're there at the beginning. That history seemed to me so important. And of course, you know, obviously I care about history when I did the history for the Department of Mental Health as my parting gift to the department. I'm grateful also to have known and worked with many of the people who are on that Wall of Distinction, as well as so many of the past recipients of the George Nickel Award. It really is an amazing cohort to be part of, these magnificent people, and I thank you so much for that. Let me name just a few of the people on the wall, though, who have meant a great deal to me in my professional life. Margarita Mendez, Royal Morales, Jim Mayano, Barbara Solomon, Jeff Jew, a fellow local mental health director, my dear friend Maria Sardinius in San Diego. They're just a few. And of course, Francis Feldman, whose major contributions to mental health in Los Angeles County I spoke about when I addressed this group in 2008. Francis and her husband were major groundbreakers in establishing the Department of Mental Health, making it happen. Wonderful works to be part of this community. If I have accomplished anything to merit this award, it really is only because I have been surrounded in the department and in the larger mental health and human service community by wonderful people, people smarter than I, as dedicated as I, with a great range of experiences which made for great teams who could work together, who shared the passion to make mental health services in this state the best, always. And I could just list that forever. Sue Peck, the California Coalition for Mental Health in 1980, when we tried to get mental health insurance required. Isn't it marvelous today that we can say everybody can have mental health insurance regardless of pre-existing conditions? Well, we worked on that, and we're so glad to see that. The local mental health directors were great body of colleagues, and so many of you here. I have learned so much from you. You've contributed to all the improvements we celebrate. Of course, many of my colleagues were social workers, and I'm honored that so many of you are here today. As Marv said, I have been blessed by my family. A husband who supported me strongly in every aspect of my work, and two wonderful, capable sons who were really glad that I was busy at work and therefore I couldn't mess around with them too much. And Rob knows, yes. And now I am blessed with another husband and sharing a lot of my time back and forth between Canada and here. And that's a joy too. But most of all, I want to say it's a joy to see how, under Dr. Southard's leadership and stewardship, Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health has continued to be a strong leader of strategic, preventive, and anti-stigma initiatives, and for client-driven, rehabilitation-focused service innovation and implementation. I'm pleased to have had a part in that history, and I look forward to our future together in the next stages of health and mental health integration. And I look forward to all of that CSWA will chronicle. I've already suggested some people who need to be interviewed for the oral histories and honored who haven't yet been, but there are so many who have made such a difference, and I thank you so much for this honor.
In 2010, the CSWA introduced a new award named in honor of Francis Lomas Feldman, one of the founding members of the CSWA. This award recognizes an individual who has demonstrated exceptional qualities in the area of education, whether as a scholar or as an educator. Awardees are selected on the basis of their extraordinary accomplishments in and commitment to study, research, and or teaching in their field, with special consideration to efforts that relate to the understanding and preservation of history and the application of historical lessons to society's most pressing problems. We are honored today to have with us the recipient of the first Francis Feldman Excellence in Education Award, Dr. June Brown. Let's give Dr. Brown a hand. And it sounds in many of our comments today, Dr. Brown, that there are many people here who are committed to the influence and the support that you've given students over the years. Also in attendance is Donna Feldman-Munker. Donna, where are you? I know you're right. There you are, Donna. Donna is the daughter of Francis Feldman and joins us today all the way from New York City. So as we take pictures today, Donna, I'm going to be calling on you to come and join us in the pictures. Amy Levine, Department Chair, Department of Social Work, California State University, Northridge, is present to make the presentation of the Francis Lomas Feldman Excellence in Education Award today. Amy?
I also received a degree from here, and I'm glad I didn't have Dr. Brown, because I probably would have had an A- too. And I would have fought it. Keeping with the theme of Maimonides, I want to acknowledge Jean Daniels for helping to educate people who she and all of us have met over the years, who then changed the lives of others who she will never have the opportunity to meet. But the education that she has provided for so many students is really unbelievable. So it is my honor to present this award to Dr. Jean Daniels, who has been a mentor to so many of us in this room and in the field of social work. Jean was the one who who met me in the front office on the day of my interview for a faculty position. She had been on faculty for over 30 years at that point, and decided it was high time to start an MSW program in the San Fernando Valley. It was Dr. Daniels' determination and hard work that allowed CSUN to commit to an MSW program, and under her directorship, it began to thrive and to meet the needs of educating future social workers in the San Fernando Valley. Before my interview, I thought of a number of reasons why, if offered the position, I probably shouldn't take it. But after spending a day with Dr. Daniels, I wanted nothing more than to receive that call to be able to educate others under her leadership and mentorship. Dr. Daniels has been an inspiration to so many women, particularly women of color. She joined a faculty of predominantly white men back in the 70s, and yet she thrived. She had a hand in recruiting many of our original faculty, including members who were her former students and who are here today. Jean continues to have a wonderful calmness about her that makes people want to be in her presence and to learn from her. She has certainly taught me to maintain a level head in the face of chaos, to listen to others' stories, and to support our students, as we never know what kind of journey they have taken to reach our doorstep. After all of her years of teaching, I imagine that Jean has touched the lives of thousands of students in hundreds of different ways, not only through her lectures and knowledge, but through her willingness to listen and to remain committed and dedicated to the learning process. I don't know anyone more deserving of an Excellence in Education Award than Jean E. Daniels. And my favorite saying of Jean's, when she'd come and visit us in our offices, she would say, "And on that note," and walk away. So on that note, I would like to present, thank you, formally, the Francis Lomas Feldman Excellence in Education Award to Dr. Jean E. Daniels.
Too. Okay. Oh, three of us? Then we'll. Okay. Thank you.
Well, thanks ever so much for this award. As you can see, I have my lay already, because one of my former students works for the County of Mental Health. Dennis, are you here? Yes, he's in the back. So he gave me this first. So, yeah. Okay. Putting on my glasses, I wanted to thank the Board of Directors of the California Social Welfare Archive for giving me this 2014. I want to thank the Board of Directors of the California Social Welfare Archive for giving me the 2014 Francis Loman Feldman Excellence in Education Award. This really was a surprise to me, because I think that my colleague Barbara Solomon got it maybe, I don't know which year, but I think my department put my name up with Barbara. And I knew that I could not compete with Barbara Solomon. So when I didn't get the award, I did not feel uncomfortable at all, because I knew it went to the better person. When I say better person, I say that because I have so much respect for Barbara. And I also have so much respect for my colleagues in social welfare, at social work, at CSUN. I would like for them to stand at CSUN. And also for my community support system from Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. I would like them to stand too. Because I can tell people, I've been a social worker now for 50 years. I started my career at University of Kansas, and I'm due to go back for the anniversary, 50 years, in a couple of weeks, but I'm not going because I'm a new widow. My husband died about 8 weeks ago, and I'm finding widowhood and being single again a challenge. But I say all that to say that my commitment to social work is deep because my education started 50 years ago at the University of Kansas. I was a liberal arts major with an emphasis in social welfare. That was pre the DSW program, and Kansas was really a leader. And one of my colleagues now who got his PhD from Kansas remembers that generalist practice really started at KU. And I'm thinking that when I left KU, I went to Howard University in Washington, D.C., and got my MSW there. And at that time, in the 60s at Howard, I was a combination social welfare, caseworker, and group worker. That was pre-having casework and group work, but I wanted both. And I was able to convince the faculty to give me a dual degree. My first job was at UCLA at the Neuropsychiatric Institute in the mid-60s. And I'm saying that my experience there was very positive. And it really made me think about going to Europe for the first time. I studied and practiced in London, England, at Guy's Hospital. Many of you probably are familiar with Guy's Hospital, but at that time, I was in the drug dependence unit, and I was really committed to really helping people who were drug dependent. But I thought that my experience was very good. I took advantage of the opportunity to go to Guy's because Richard Tidmus from the London School of Economics gave me the opportunity to go to Guy's. And this is what I like about being in social work. You're given many opportunities, and when you take advantage of these opportunities, Richard Tidmus didn't know me from Blue, but when I wrote him a letter, he said, "Oh yes, come, I'll make arrangements for you to come." And my parents were very supportive and said, "Oh, you can go." And I'm saying to myself, I tell my students before I retired that social work profession will give you opportunities to serve others. And I said in my notes that I really have a passion for social work, a passion for social work education, because I think young people can find a career in social work. I think they can find an opportunity to help others in social work. You find an opportunity to give service in social work. And many people are non-selfish, and we want people like that in our profession. So I'm saying thanks again for giving me this opportunity today. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Jean. And thank you, all of the honorees today, for being here with us. Thank you for everyone who has joined us for this day. And that concludes our program for today, but there is no requirement that you leave or exit immediately. It's a great time for socialization. Is there any food left, Kate? Is there more food? So take the opportunity to talk, to share, to get reacquainted with old acquaintances, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon. And thank you so much for having been here today.